Cheesman Park began as the city cemetery, the only cemetery in Denver when it was founded. General William H. Larimer founded the city of Denver November 22nd, 1858, and about a year later, he and his son decided to give Denver City its final refinement cemetery. And so they took their horses out, headed out to the biggest hill east of town, which we now know as Cheesman Park, and there set up what they called City Cemetery. City Cemetery was the cemetery until 1876. Very exclusive subdivision, the Morgan district, just south along East 9th Avenue, where all these fancy homes go in, and other expensive homes of important and influential people go in, and they start to complain about this rundown, derelict cemetery. Place for kids on Halloween and for a lot of pranks. The city tried to push people into moving bodies out. Finally, they hired a contractor, McGovern, to move the bodies, unclaimed bodies, to other places, and paid him $1 or so for each body that he moved. McGovern made quite a bit of money on the deal, and there were all kinds of charges. He would move one finger or one toe and charge you for moving a whole body. Apparently there were a lot of shenanigans and a lot of strange stuff going on, and a lot of folklore and stories about who got moved and who didn't. We worked on some of the records there and elsewhere, and our best guess is there's 1,000 to 2,000 bodies or parts of bodies still left in the ground at that vast city cemetery site.
My specialty is using a technique called ground penetrating radar to look in the ground and map interesting objects of whatever sort I'm interested in at the time in the ground. Last October, I brought my students here as a test site for ground penetrating radar because I knew that there were caskets in this general area of the park, and I wanted to give my students some experience in looking for caskets using this technique. We found a very small casket about this big that are probably of an infant or a small child. And people play frisbee on top of that little girl or boy right there. And they have picnics here in the summertime and whatever else goes on in Cheesman Park. And it doesn't seem to affect the spirits of these people as far as I know. And this was their final resting place, and I just am of the belief that they should just remain here. I'm not a big believer in exhumation.
The entire Earth is a cemetery. It's really kind of pointless to think about, tearing up the park to move the remaining bodies, because there were bodies there long before then. They're probably just dust now.
I've been with Rocky Mountain Paranormal for about 6 years now, and I'm a paranormal forensics investigator.
My name's Brian Bonner. I'm actually the one that started Rocky Mountain Paranormal.
Rocky Mountain Paranormal was really started to be of service to people that were feeling frightened in their homes. And that's where a lot of the phone calls came from, was people feeling like something was going on in their home that they needed to have somebody help them resolve, or at least get some sort of confirmation that something was going on. We're much more into the research side of it. We want to find the truth. We don't want to be a part of the, as the skeptics say, the woo side of it.
With Cheesman Park, it's pretty much one of the places that anybody getting into the field locally hears about. It's one of Denver's biggest traditional haunted spots. And depending on who you talk to, either the most haunted place in the world or the calmest place in the world. What I'd call first-hand ghost stories there. There's a lot of he said, she said, urban legend kind of a thing going. But when you actually break it down to somebody that's witnessed something there personally, it's very, very few and far between.
The Changeling was actually about a home that was right on the edge of Cheesman Park. They just changed it to Cheesman Park and put it in Washington for the actual movie, but that was supposedly something that happened here. One of the interesting things about the birth of an urban legend is as soon as one person has some sort of experience and makes it known, other people will read about that experience, go out there with that in mind, and ironically have the same experience.
I don't interest myself too much in spiritual kind of phantasms of Cheesman Park.
Good ghost story survives attempts by historians to disprove it.
The stories that have come out of the park, they're all interesting.
I can't speak directly to ever having seen any spirits or anything like that out here.
They make for great stories, and they're great to collect.
And if you do go there with your dog and your dog starts digging, watch closely because probably they'll come up with a tibia or a femur or some body part.
Sometimes when I want a good bike ride, I come down here. And I ride over to the Botanic Gardens quite often, whenever there's a free day. And so sometimes I come through the park.
It's a gorgeous park and it's a great place to get people oriented, you know, that beautiful mountain view.
They think, dead people, I'm scared, it's haunted. If you actually look into the traditional theories on why ghosts are supposed to exist, it's based off of, for example, unfinished business. They want to talk to somebody, pass on information, or go to a place that they loved, you know, just something along these lines. Where hanging out in the cemetery has no sense to it. So if you want to go with the traditional reasons of why a ghost exists, a cemetery is the last thing.